When she was a freshman in high school, Meg Busing was in a tragic car accident with some of her friends. She ended up with a traumatic brain injury, and as a teenager, had to learn how to navigate life with a distinct set of new challenges. She was able to successfully graduate high school, but a few years later in college, she had her first seizure and was diagnosed with epilepsy. She managed to achieve her dream of graduating with her degree in nursing, but then a few years later, during a pregnancy, her seizures increased and she had to pull back on her nursing career. This is when she decided to start her nonprofit, Midwest You Can Foundation. The goal of her foundation is to create community and empowerment for those living with epilepsy. After talking with Meg, I kept thinking she is the epitome of the phrase, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Over and over again, she has had her traumatic brain injury and her epilepsy cause barriers to what she has wanted to be and accomplish. But also, over and over again, she has found ways to navigate it and keep moving forward. That's why one of the purposes of her foundation is to run a yearly summer camp for kids with epilepsy. She wants these kids to experience for themselves the power and confidence that can come with reminding yourself of what you can do. Their slogan is, "With epilepsy, too many days are filled with reminders of what shouldn't be done. We're on a mission to change that." Listen to the podcast to hear more of Meg's story and journey, to learn about the summer camps she runs and the good experiences kids and parents have had with them, and also hear some sweet encouragement from Meg for anyone that might be living with epilepsy or helping their child navigate it as well. Welcome to the Do Something More podcast, a service-oriented show where we highlight the helpers who inspire us all to do something more. I'm your host, Melissa Draper. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. And my guest today, I found her on Instagram. I've always heard people talk about finding each other that way, but that's how I found her. And she started following me. And then I saw that she founded and leads this amazing foundation. And what they do is they try to create community and to help people with epilepsy find self-confidence and find community with each other and support some of those experiences that they have. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast today, Meg Busing, the founder and executive director of Midwest You Can. Meg, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today.
I would love to have you just start off giving a short introduction of yourself. And then I know a big part of why you started your foundation is your story and your journey with epilepsy. So why don't you go ahead and share both of those with us?
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, thanks for all that you're doing and for letting us get the news out about our nonprofits and hearing each other's stories, because this is a powerful podcast that you do. So I appreciate you having me. And yeah, like you said, I am the founder and executive director of the Midwest You Can Foundation, and I'm also a registered nurse for probably the past 15 years or so. I've been a registered nurse as well. But yeah, it was way back. Gosh, this is going to make me sound old, but in 1998 was my freshman year of high school. So if you have a calculator, you can figure that out. But I was 14 years old and I was just finishing up my basketball season. I had always wanted to play basketball, a huge fan. So I was on student council in high school and was just, loving finally getting into high school. And so it was March. And I'm a huge basketball fan, so we called it March Madness. And I had a bunch of family in town for the local state basketball tournaments. My cousin played. So I had skipped practice that day. I was running track practice, but I skipped it that day because I had so much family in town and rode home with a group of girls from school. Their older sister was driving, and I lived 10 minutes from school, and she spun around and the car hit a tree. It was a single car accident. the girl, all I know is from what I've heard from the story is that the car spun around and the other 4 girls were okay, and they looked back and saw me in the back seat of the car. My head had gone out the window and hit a tree. I was still in, unbuckled, and they just said that I was bleeding from my ears and my nose, and my head was down and I was unresponsive.
Mm.
So, luckily, it happened right across the street from a high school, or excuse me, from a hospital. So the paramedics came right away and took me to the hospital, and I was in a coma and on life support for the next 7 days. I was in a coma, and so it was now that I'm a mom, I can't imagine. I mean, even trying to imagine it is awful if it was one of my kids. And so my mom and dad having to get that call, my mom always remembers getting that call and said my grandma was there and they were just all panicked and didn't know what to do. So they came to the hospital. So for the next 7 days, I was on a chest tube and ventilator, and they had to shave part of my head to monitor the pressure in my brain. But then on the 7th day, I woke up, or this is all what I've been told. I couldn't remember right away what had happened, but my parents were so excited and told me the story. And I remember again, this is me, 14, freshman. So
Mhm.
it was fun stuff was on my mind. And I remember they gave me a mirror and it was like the worst high school nightmare had come true because I looked in the mirror and I had scratches and stuff, but a big chunk of my hair was missing. And so I was like, oh my gosh, you tell me that this was a car accident. Yeah, my injured my brain. Yeah. But the bigger deal is this big chunk of hair that's
Why is my hair
like,
gone?
why is this big chunk of hair missing? And so
Mhm.
with a brain injury, you can't see it. And so everything looks okay. There were no other big physical injuries that I had. And so I really didn't understand what had happened or what my future held. But after that stay in the hospital for about another 2 weeks, I was sent to the local rehab hospital, Madonna Rehab in Lincoln. And it was there where I got a room and lived there and started working with a physical therapist, a speech therapist, occupational therapy. And again, I was thinking, well, I can walk, so maybe this will just be a short stay here at the rehab hospital. I was very weak, but was still
Mhm.
able to get up and walk. But then it was in speech therapy that it all came to life and where the world kind of started crashing down on me, and I was realizing I wasn't that same girl that I used to be because I worked with a speech therapist, and I remember she handed me a puzzle and asked me to put it together. And, now having kids, it was like a 10-piece puzzle, which even, when I had
Right.
a toddler, it was
Could put
easy
it
to do it
together.
together.
Mhm.
But for me, just looking down at that puzzle, I could not believe that I didn't know how. It was just in my mind, I was like, how do I not know how to put this together? But I really couldn't. And they asked me to write my name, and I wasn't able, with the pen, it was hard to do. They would show me a picture of like a dog and say, okay, Meg, what is this? And I couldn't think of the word. And so it was there where I was starting to realize that a traumatic brain injury isn't quick and easy to recover from. I was starting to realize some difficulties that I was having, not knowing that they would be long-term disabilities that I have. So I was able to pass me right through physical therapy. I had just finished my basketball season, so I was in basketball mode. I had always dreamed of
Mhm.
playing basketball. So that was, passed right out of that occupational therapy. I was able to tie my shoes, button a button, zip a zipper. And so, but it was just that speech therapy where it lasted the longest. And I was there in and out of speech therapy all summer long. And then they were worried, oh gosh, the accident was in March. That's missing all of freshman year of March. April, and
Mhm.
May. So they were debating on whether to let me pass and go on to sophomore year with my class or if I was gonna have to take freshman year over again. And I said, "No way." And I all of this has happened. I gotta go on with my class and with the girls that were in the accident. I gotta play basketball again. I gotta, do all of this stuff. And so I worked really hard during the summer with awesome teachers that would come to my house and tutor me to catch me up in my classes. Luckily, I was able to get back into my sophomore year of high school, but it was before then that I had my annual physical with my pediatrician. Even though I was in high school, I love my pediatrician, so I saw him all the way up till I was 21. So I went and visited Dr. Doug just to get my checkup, and it was there where we were talking about the accident, and I had told him, "You know what? I'm super excited to try out for basketball again." And he kinda looked at me and was like, "Meg, we gotta talk about basketball because you've already had a head injury. The risk of another head injury is just too great playing a contact sport. And if you did have another head injury, this is hard to recover from, but if you get injured again, I don't even wanna say," he was just like, "We
Mhm.
don't even wanna go there and imagine how that would turn out." And so he just said, "No more basketball." And I just thought, "No more basketball ever?" And so to me, looking back as an adult now, I think, "Oh, there's so much other worse stuff that could have come from that, Meg." But back then, it was a huge deal and a real punch in the gut
And
after
as a
it.
teenager, you're already kinda navigating things and learning who you are, and to have all of those things taken that were part of your identity,
Exactly,
that's
yeah.
tough.
Yeah, it was tough. So, went back to school kinda, yeah, trying to navigate and had those troubles with school, so they introduced me to what an IEP is. I didn't know what that, with individualized
Mhm.
education program, and so we had to set up all these services for me for my short-term memory and my cognitive difficulties that came as a result. So then that was becoming real too, that oh, I needed to have extra time on my tests. I needed to go to counselor's office and take my tests. I needed to have note takers in my classes. So just everything was changing. And
Mhm.
as a individual person in general, when life changes that much, it's difficult. But, as a kid, not understanding all of it, it was really hard to just keep getting the no, you can't do this. No, Meg, sorry, you can't do this. Um,
Right.
so
Well,
some
but you made it all the way through high school.
Yep, made it all the way through just with the can-do attitude. My
Mhm.
parents are amazing counselor at school. My basketball coach still let me be a manager for the basketball
Mhm.
team, so I was still
Mhm.
able to wear the letter jacket because still, back in the '90s, that was still a thing, and was able to sit on the bench with my team, and so I was starting to see how to make good out of
The
negative
hard
stuff that
things.
happened. That
Mhm.
that is part of what got me through. Physical therapy, occupational speech, yes, but changing my mindset into I gotta look for the things I still can do because otherwise, I'm just gonna crawl in a ball and be negative. So I made it through high school with the help of awesome teachers and then made it into college. And I was so excited to finally, be in college just like my friends, but I had those accommodations that I had to tell teachers about. And my dream had always been to be a nurse. My mom's a nurse. My grandma's a nurse. I have aunts that were nurses. And I just always saw that as such an honor. So I was able to get into nursing school, which was amazing. And it was my second semester in nursing school, and I was up giving a presentation in front of my class. And I wasn't nervous because I'm the type that can meet new people and I'm not always nervous talking in front of people. But during my talk that day, my heart started to race and I was having trouble swallowing. And I just couldn't get the words out that I wanted to use. And now people of friends in the audience have said that I was looking to the left side of the room and my right arm started to raise up in the air as I was trying to gather my words. But I was able to finish my presentation after that 10 seconds of kind of being out of it. And I finished my talk. But it was after that class where my professor came up to me and said, Meg, I think that was more than anxiety, like you've been saying that was. I think that looks more like it could be a seizure. So it's kind of luckily, looking at the good, luckily I did have it in a presentation in front of a nursing instructor who saw that day, because I could have got on for years thinking, oh, I just have anxiety and this heart racing and my arm raising up in the air.
Right. That's not what people usually think of as a
No.
seizure, too.
Right, because I have a cousin, and then you see it on TV where people fall to the ground and convulse and get sick, and mine wasn't like that, and I had no idea that there were other types of seizures than just, it used to be called grand mal, now it's called a tonic-clonic, and so it was just the start of the next being diagnosed was just the start of the next 15 years of my life.
Wow, and getting that diagnosis. Well, I know eventually you did make it out and you graduated from nursing school, but I would love to fast forward a little to where and how and why you decided to start your You Can Foundation and what started that.
Yeah, well, it was an honor. It was so awesome to get through nursing school, and I started my first job in pediatrics and was still having those complex partial seizures, or what they're called. I was only having them like a couple times a month, but they were starting to really impact my nursing career. And so as I continued after I got pregnant, sometimes they say, with our hormones after pregnancy, maybe your seizures will be the same, maybe they'll get a little worse, maybe they'll get better. Mine got significantly worse during pregnancy. And at that
Uh-huh.
time, I was still working as a nurse,
Mhm.
and they got, yeah, significantly worse. And so that's when I sort of had to turn and think of another career aside from nursing that maybe I could do to also help make a difference in people's lives. Because that's the reason I went into nursing, was to make an impact, to hug people, to
Right.
help them at their most vulnerable times. And
Mhm.
so since nursing was kind of a difficulty for me, I had volunteered in college for a camp for kids with cancer in California. And I just went out there because I wanted to make a difference. And
Mhm.
I had friends who went to summer camp during the summer, but I was always home because I'm the oldest in our family. So I was always the babysitter in the summer. So I never got the summer
Mhm.
camp experience, but I had such a great time there at Camp Okaizu for kids with cancer that I was having trouble with my nursing career, having trouble that my seizures were recurring more often. And so I thought, hey, you know what? We don't have anything in Nebraska or in the Midwest for kids with epilepsy. What if I could create a camp like the one I volunteered at as a camp counselor for kids with epilepsy here in the Midwest? And so
Mm.
it was just kind of a dream that I was like, that would be super cool to do it someday, but kind of it was a dream. But some awesome people in our community, people who are more in the business world that were willing to hear my idea and were like, "Oh my gosh, that would be awesome, Meg," were able to help me start it. And so I named it Camp You Can, because it was my nonprofit, it was my camp, so they were like, "What are you gonna call it, Meg?" And I thought about it for a long time, and then, yeah, with epilepsy, we're reminded of all that we can't do. For me, it was, couldn't be the nurse I had always wanted to be, couldn't be the
Mhm.
mom I had always wanted to be because I was a mom having seizures. Some of the people here, you can't drive, you can't play sports, you can't have slumber parties with your friends, just all these you can't. And I
Mhm.
wanted to create a place for myself and kids to find all that they can do in a safe environment. You know,
I love that.
yeah, with the help of others, created Camp You Can. So these are kids with epilepsy that come in. Sometimes we do it locally here in
Mhm.
Nebraska, and parents will drop them off and they'll say, "You know what? I know they're gonna be overnight. I'm sure my kid is gonna wanna call me before bedtime and say goodnight." And, we told my son that there was gonna be a ropes course, and we watched YouTube and showed him a ropes course, but we have a feeling he's not gonna do it because it's really scary and his seizures
Mhm.
scare him. And then when parents come and pick up their kids, we have video of their kids on the ropes course. They didn't get that phone call on the first night of camp of their kid being nervous and scared. It's like parents come, they're like, "You're kidding me. He did the ropes course. He did archery and wasn't nervous." And it's the best feeling to tell parents, "No, he was able to see what he could do and was surrounded by other kids who also felt that way, and by
Right.
camp counselors who are cheering them on, singing songs." And so that's totally what camp is all about and why I created it in the first place, were just for
Yeah.
those experience.
Right. So that's the big basis for your foundation are these awesome summer camps.
Yes.
And you have 1 camp each summer for how long?
Yep, we have one camp for 3 nights, 4 days for these kids, so this will be, like, the 12th year of camp. So we've had, like, over 400 kids come in and out, and these kids have come from Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri. We had one little guy fly in from Florida
Wow.
wanting this opportunity, or his parents wanted this opportunity for him, and so, yeah, we get awesome volunteers to help this thing continue going, and kids come every year, and then they will meet the criteria to become a camp counselor too. And so that is just so awesome to see them come back as camp counselors because they can really, really understand our campers.
Right, and relate to them. And I can only imagine that sense of community. I know that's a big goal of what you
Yeah,
wanted to do with your nonprofit,
exactly.
and we kinda talked about how I've heard about that with other medical things or things that kids are navigating. I've had family members go to things like diabetes camp and things like that. But there's just something about being there with others that are navigating some of the same things that you are.
Yeah, and sometimes you can feel alone with epilepsy, and I wanted to be a place where kids can talk about their feelings without worrying if someone's gonna see a seizure. I wanted a place where they can see that they're not alone. Sometimes you'll hear them say, "Oh my gosh, you take that medication too? High five, me too." Or, just you have to sleep on a bottom bunk because you have seizures during the night like I do. Gosh, I don't feel alone anymore. Or, "Oh, your sibling always has gotten to go to the same summer camp every year and you have to stay home with your mom and dad instead of go to camp." Me too, and we finally have a place where we can go. And so, yeah, that's totally what it's all about, and I'm all about the touchy-feely part of camp. Yes,
Mhm.
being a nurse, and I'm all about the zip line and the ropes course and archery, but really what I do it for is for the emotional part. And so we have a discussion group during camp. We do the little kids together and the big kids together, and we get art project going and art therapist or counselor there to lead the discussions. And so they're able to talk about their feelings without feeling embarrassed. And sometimes the teenagers have said, "This is the first time I've ever talked about it without feeling embarrassed." And that's too what it's all about. They're able to
Yeah.
come out and talk about their feelings. And on the last day of camp, again, because I want the emotional side to really impact, we have a parent discussion where parents are able to come before they pick up their kids, and they're able to trade resources. And most have said that it's been life changing for them to hear that they're not alone with a child with epilepsy. And
Right, I can imagine they need that sense of
they
community
need it
too.
too because other
Mhm.
parents can't relate. I can't even relate to that. I'm an individual with epilepsy, but imagining one of my kids having epilepsy is just heartbreaking.
Mhm.
And so for these families, parents to be able to come together is just another reason why we do it, so that they don't have to feel alone and that they can gather resources for each other. And I hear from parents, oh my gosh, I've become friends with Joey's mom and now we talk every month,
Oh, that's
and
great.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's such I don't know, when I've been in those experiences, it always just feels like an honor, sacred honor, and a privilege to be able to create those opportunities for people to come together and form those connections that they might have not otherwise had the
Right.
opportunity to do.
Yeah. And that's what we're all about.
Most definitely. Well, I love that you talked about the physical things you do there and the emotional things, and I think they all go together. I think
Yeah. I think
confidence can come from conquering that rope course and being able to talk about your challenges.
Yeah, and there's this cool thing we do. We do props at camp is what it's called, and this is another way I love to impact the kids. And when camp counselors see a kid conquering the ropes course or, just doing any awesome thing, we have a piece of paper that they can write a prop, like giving props to you. I saw with your new friend that you were able to, help them on to the ropes course today, and that was super awesome. Or we hand them out at lunchtime and at meals so the kids can open these little letters and see
Oh,
that it's
cute.
from their camp counselor and praising them. Or I love your dance moves. You're going to have to show me those dance moves. And parents say that kids keep them year round, just treasured takeaways from Camp Buchanan. So
That's
just
great.
these little things we do every year, that little traditions that families and kids love.
Well, I love to include in every podcast episode because we have listeners from all over general encouragement. And there's so many different things I thought of to ask you, Megan.
Oh,
So we'll run through a couple of them. But
sure.
first, with summer coming up and summer camps like these, I would just love for you to give maybe some general encouragement for anyone that's ever thought of either having their child that has a special need or different things, sending them to something like that, or someone that's wanted to volunteer. What encouragement or general advice would you give?
First to parents, I would, and caregivers, I would just say, go for it. And if you see this opportunity available, an asthma camp, diabetes camp for foster kids, we have one here in Nebraska for kids going through foster care. And they're just amazing opportunities for kids to find that they're not alone. They can watch a video and hear, hey, I have diabetes too, or watch a TV show where a kid might be on the autism spectrum or something like that. But when there's a camp where they can meet face to face with people like that, it's just so empowering for these kids. And I think looking out in your community or asking school counselors or teachers if they know of any camps like specific to a situation that a child is going through. It's one of the best gifts to give a child. And parents have said that this camp is one of the best gifts that we've been given. Some parents have come back and said, we have not gone on a date night for the past 5 years because we have
Wow.
to be with our daughter at all times.
Mhm.
Some are like, oh my gosh, we were able to go spend a weekend in Kansas City and we've never done that. And so it's just parents finding opportunities like this are awesome. So, and other camp directors, I've gone to a camp conference for all camp directors and the people and, the employees. People who work at summer camps are just hands down awesome. Like, they're just a different type of person. When you get us all together in the same room, everybody is singing camp songs.
I'm
Everyone is
sure there's a lot of energy
Oh my
there.
gosh, everyone's giving high fives, giving props, positive comments to each other, sharing personal stories. That's what happens at camp, and so that's why I encourage any parent that has a camp available or who can find one. It's just a great opportunity for, parents and their kids.
Right, and what about volunteers? What
And
encouragement would you
volun
give if someone's been thinking about volunteering at a summer camp?
Yes, and I myself volunteering is life-changing. Getting through that car accident that I was in and the traumatic brain injury, I volunteered all throughout that because I found out that was my healing, was just knowing that I'm not alone and knowing that there were others going through difficult times like I was, that I wasn't alone with my difficult times. And so for camp counselors, you see that at camp, you get to become a hero for the week. These kids love their camp counselors. Like, I'm like, "Hey, I'm Meg, the camp director. Don't you wanna give me a high five?" And they're like, Anyway, where's my camp director Superman or my camp counselor Superman at?" And so camp counselors are life-changing for these kids. Yes, it's late nights. Yes, it's walking with a bunch of kids, making sure everybody has water and bug spray, but it is life-changing for camp counselors, and you meet other awesome camp counselors who do the same thing with their free time, and so it's just yeah, if you are free a week during your summer, 2 days during your summer, call out, see if you can help at a camp because we need it, and it's life-changing for staff too.
Good advice, and I've, again, known people that have had great, even life-changing experiences themselves while
Yeah,
being a volunteer, so
yeah.
well, Meg, for anyone that might find this episode that is walking through that journey of epilepsy themselves or helping a loved one navigate it, what advice and encouragement would you give to them? You've given so much already with your positive you can, but what personally would you say to them and to encourage them?
I would just let them know that they're not alone and that there are resources out there for them and that there are things that they still can do with adults like myself with epilepsy. Sometimes you feel like you're in the closet or you can't talk about it because there is such a stigma out there still about epilepsy. And so I would tell college kids, young adults to seek out your resources, check our website because we're always willing to talk about it. And for parents and for kids, it's just to keep on going, and to find all that you can do and find those other people to talk to because epilepsy is a difficult disease to deal with. And it's not one that just boop goes away with an antibiotic or it's one that sticks around forever. So it's just working as a team can make such a positive difference.
Thank you. That's great, beautiful advice. And where can people find more if they want to learn more about your foundation or donate or get involved in other ways?
Sure. Well, we are www.midwestyoucan, so all one word, .org. And that is our website and it has lots of information. We also, like you said, have a Instagram page. And then on Facebook, we are Camp You Can is our page on Facebook. So just always posting events and then there's if you just Google Camp You Can, some news stories will show up. The local news has been awesome. So you might see it featured on the news as well. We would love to hear from people and yeah, find that you're not alone and we can help you find the resources you need. If we don't have them, we can sure direct you to other amazing nonprofits and services who have what you need.
Right. I'm sure there are nonprofits all over that deal with this issue as well.
Yeah,
That's great. Well, I'll leave links to all of those in the show notes.
awesome.
Meg, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Your positive, uplifting spirit is contagious. I'm going to
Oh,
get
right back
through the
at
rest of
you.
my day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being willing to come on the podcast today. Any final words that you want to
Well,
share?
thank you for having me. And I just like to say we say with epilepsy, too many days are filled with reminders of what shouldn't be done. And at Camp You Can, we're on a mission to change that. So thank you for having me. And it's been an honor.
That's a beautiful slogan, and I think many can apply to lots of different situations. So thank you so much, Meg.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
That was my interview with Meg Busing, the founder and executive director of the nonprofit Midwest You Can Foundation. And don't you just love her upbeat, can do attitude? It really is contagious, such an inspiration. I was so inspired by hearing her story, hearing all the ways that she's navigated some of these hard things in her life, but also the ways she's been able to grow, persevere, and now serve and help bring others together that also have some of those same challenges. And I really appreciated the realness that she shared there in her story. And I also loved hearing about these camps that she does and the connections that are made there and the sense of community that she's giving to these kids and their parents, so their families as a whole. I love those reminders at the end. If you've been thinking about sending your child that has some type of special need to a camp this summer, I hope she gave you some encouragement to realize that it might be the best decision you can make for your child. And hopefully, she gave you some encouragement for that. And I also love the encouragement she gave to anyone that's ever wanted to volunteer at a summer camp. She mentioned that she did ones for kids with cancer when she was in college, but there are really all types of camps out there for different things and for what you might be interested in helping or assisting with. And I know many of them will take all kinds of volunteers. You don't necessarily have to have navigated that yourself, but just be willing to receive the instruction and training that they give you so that you can be effective and do what you need to at the camp. So I love that encouragement too. I will leave a link to her website so you can go learn more about her foundation, maybe donate if that's something you're interested in, and also see some of the resources and things they have for others that are navigating the challenges of epilepsy. So, thank you so much for being here. I just want to give you a friendly reminder that if you'd like to show the podcast some love, you can follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That's always great. Or share this episode with a friend or someone else you think might benefit from this information and hearing Meg's inspiring story. And I just want to finally leave by saying I hope that you can find some way this week to do something more, to lift, help, inspire, or make a difference.